The email arrived on a Tuesday morning at exactly 9:47 a.m. Subject line, Transition Planning, Urgent. No pleasantries, no context, just a meeting request for 2 p.m. in Conference Room B. After 12 years at Meridian Solutions, a mid-sized logistics consulting firm in downtown Phoenix, I knew that tone. It wasn't good. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I'm Sarah Mitchell, and I'd built the entire client retention program from scratch. When I started here fresh out of college, client churn was at 34%. By the time this story unfolds, I'd brought it down to 8%, the lowest in our industry. But numbers, as I was about to learn, don't always protect you. Conference Room B smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. Sitting across from me was Derek Hoffman, my direct supervisor for the past 3 years, and Janet Winters from HR. Derek's tie was crooked, a tell I'd noticed whenever he was about to deliver bad news to a client. Today, I was the client. Sarah. Derek began, his voice carrying that artificial warmth managers use when they're about to destroy your life. We need to talk about your role moving forward. I didn't respond. In 12 years, I'd learned that silence makes people uncomfortable enough to reveal more than they intended. The company is restructuring, Janet chimed in, sliding a folder across the polished table. We're consolidating departments to improve efficiency. Your position is being reimagined. Reimagined. I let the word hang in the air. What does that mean exactly? Derek shifted in his seat. We're bringing in someone new to head the client retention division. Someone with a fresh perspective and innovative approaches. The folder contained a job description that looked remarkably similar to mine, except with a title that paid $30,000 more than I currently made and required a master's degree I didn't have. The requirements were oddly specific, almost as if they'd been written for someone particular. Who is this person? I asked. Derek's smile became even more plastic. Marcus Taylor. He's coming from Henderson and Associates in Seattle. Impressive. Background, really impressive. I knew Henderson and Associates. They were our biggest competitor, and their client retention rate was 23%, nearly 3 times higher than ours. But Marcus Taylor had something I didn't. He was Derek's fraternity brother from college. Here's where we need your help, Derek continued, leaning forward with practiced sincerity. We want you to train Marcus. Show him the systems, introduce him to the clients, walk him through your processes. You know this division better than anyone. The audacity was breathtaking. They wanted me to train my own replacement, to hand over 12 years of relationships, processes, and institutional knowledge to someone who would earn significantly more while producing inferior results. What happens to my position? I asked. Though I already suspected the answer, Janet opened another folder. We have an opening in data entry. It's a lateral move, same pay grade, and you'd be working closely with the retention team you helped build. Data entry. After 12 years of building the most successful client retention program in the company's history, they wanted to stick me in a cubicle entering numbers into spreadsheets. When does Marcus start? Monday, Derek said. We'll need you to spend the next 4 weeks bringing him up to speed. Full knowledge transfer, client introductions, system access, everything. I looked at both of them, these people I'd worked alongside for years, who'd attended my birthday parties and asked about my mother's health. Their faces showed no recognition of what they were asking, no acknowledgement of the betrayal. I need some time to process this, I said, closing the folders. Of course, Derek nodded. But we'll need an answer by tomorrow. The transition timeline is pretty tight. I walked back to my office in a daze. My space on the 15th floor overlooked the Phoenix skyline, a view I'd earned through years of exceeding every metric they threw at me. The walls were covered with client appreciation letters, performance awards, and team photos from company retreats where I'd been celebrated as an indispensable asset. Now I was dispensable. Worse, I was expected to facilitate my own professional execution. That evening, I sat in my apartment in Old Town Scottsdale, staring at the folders spread across my kitchen table. The job description for Marcus Taylor's position included responsibilities I'd developed, metrics I'd improved, and strategies I'd pioneered. They were literally asking me to teach someone else to do my job better than they could ever hope to, but as I read through the documents more carefully, something clicked. They wanted a complete knowledge transfer. They wanted me to show Marcus everything, every process, every client relationship, every system quirk, every shortcut I'd developed over 12 years, and that's exactly what I was going to do. Marcus Taylor arrived on Monday morning wearing a $1,000 suit and a smile that screamed, "I've already won." He was everything Derek probably wished he could be: tall, confident, with an MBA from Northwestern and a handshake that felt like a performance. Sarah. So great to meet you, he said, pumping my hand with excessive enthusiasm. Derek's told me so much about your work here. I'm really looking forward to learning from you. The condescension was subtle but unmistakable. This wasn't someone who planned to learn from me, this was someone humoring me before taking over my life's work. Well, Marcus, I said, matching his energy with my own practiced smile, I'm committed to giving you absolutely everything I know. Complete transparency, no shortcuts. You'll get the full Sarah Mitchell experience. Over the next 4 weeks, I trained Marcus with religious devotion. I started with our client database, all 847 active accounts, with detailed notes on each relationship. I showed him which clients preferred morning calls versus afternoon emails, who needed technical language versus plain English, which accounts required gentle handling and which responded to direct approaches. This is incredibly detailed, Marcus said, scrolling through client profiles I'd built over years of relationship management. Oh, this is just the beginning, I assured him. Let me show you the really important stuff. I introduced him to Elena Rodriguez, our biggest client, representing $2.3 million in annual revenue. Elena and I had worked together for 8 years. And she trusted me completely. During our video call, I made sure Marcus understood just how crucial this relationship was. Elena, I want you to meet Marcus Taylor. He's going to be taking over account management. Elena's smile faltered slightly. Taking over? Sarah, you're not leaving, are you? Just transitioning to new opportunities within the company, I said smoothly. But Marcus here is going to take excellent care of you. He has some really innovative ideas about client retention. I caught Marcus's slight panic, he hadn't prepared any innovative ideas. But I pressed on. Marcus was just telling me about his plans to completely overhaul our communication protocols. Weren't you, Marcus? Well, yes, I believe in bringing fresh perspectives to established processes, he stammered. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. After the call, Elena sent me a private message. Sarah, I hope you know what you're doing. We've got the Henderson Industries launch coming up, and I need someone I can trust. I forwarded the message to Marcus. Just so you're aware of the timeline. Pressures, I told him. Elena can be particular about communication during major launches. What I didn't mention was that Elena had specifically requested minimal communication during launches, preferring to focus on execution rather than updates. Marcus, eager to make his mark, began sending daily check-in emails. I introduced Marcus to our proprietary tracking system, a complex database I designed that monitored client satisfaction, project milestones, and renewal probabilities. The system was powerful but notoriously user-unfriendly, requiring specific input sequences and particular formatting. This seems overly complicated, Marcus observed after his third attempt to update a client record resulted in an error message. It's sophisticated, I corrected. Once you get the hang of it, it provides incredible insight into client behavior patterns. Here, let me show you the advanced features. I spent 2 hours walking him through every function, every report, every data export option. I showed him how to generate the monthly retention analysis that the executive team relied on for board presentations. I explained the intricate web of automated triggers that sent personalized communications based on client behavior. The key, I told him, is consistency. The system works beautifully, but only if you maintain the exact protocols. Any deviation can throw off the entire algorithmic framework. Marcus nodded seriously, taking detailed notes. He didn't ask what would happen if he made mistakes. He assumed, as Derek had, that my system was foolproof. I introduced him to our vendor relationships, the external partners who handled overflow work during busy periods. These weren't just service providers. They were extension of our team, with relationships I'd cultivated over years of collaboration. Tom Peterson at Velocity Logistics is absolutely crucial during Q4, I explained during a 3-way call. Tom, Marcus will be your primary contact moving forward. Tom, who'd been working with me for 6 years, was polite but reserved. Sure thing, Sarah. Marcus, I'll need some time to understand your working style. Sarah and I have a pretty streamlined process. I'm sure we'll develop our own rhythm, Marcus said with confident dismissal. After the call, I sent Marcus a detailed document outlining Tom's preferences, communication style, and the specific protocols that kept our partnership efficient. It was thorough, accurate, and completely overwhelming. Tom seems pretty set in his ways, Marcus commented. He's exceptional at what he does, I replied. But he values consistency. He's been burned before by account managers who tried to reinvent the wheel. I wasn't lying. Tom did value consistency. What I failed to emphasize was that he was also extremely adaptable and had successfully worked with dozens of different account managers over the years. But Marcus, primed to expect difficulty, began approaching Tom with unnecessary caution and overcommunication. The training continued with exhaustive detail. I showed Marcus our crisis management protocols, our client onboarding sequences, our renewal negotiation strategies. I walked him through every edge case, every exception, every nuance I'd learned through 12 years of experience. Your documentation is incredibly thorough, Marcus said during our final training session. Almost overwhelming. That's the nature of client retention, I told him. Every detail matters. One small oversight can cascade into major problems. It was true. Client retention did require attention to detail. But I'd packaged that truth in a way that made the job seem impossibly complex, requiring constant vigilance and perfect execution. On Marcus's last day of training, I handed him a comprehensive transition document, 47 pages of processes, contacts, protocols, and procedures. This covers everything, I said. Client preferences, system quirks, vendor relationships, escalation procedures, reporting requirements. If you follow this exactly, you'll be successful. Marcus thanked me with what seemed like genuine gratitude. He had no idea I'd just handed him a beautifully crafted blueprint for failure. Marcus officially took over my responsibilities on a Monday morning in March. I moved to my new desk in the data entry department, a gray cubicle on the 3rd floor. With no windows and the constant hum of fluorescent lights. Derek made a company-wide announcement about exciting leadership changes and fresh perspectives in client retention. The first crack appeared within 48 hours. Elena Rodriguez called the main line asking for me directly. When she was transferred to Marcus, the conversation didn't go well. Marcus, following my detailed documentation about Elena's particular communication needs during launches, had sent her 6 emails in 2 days requesting updates on the Henderson Industries project. Sarah, Elena said when she finally reached me, what's happening over there? This new guy is micromanaging me worse than my own CEO. I'm sorry, Elena. I'm not directly involved with account management anymore. You'll need to work with Marcus. Well, can you at least explain to him that I don't need daily check-ins? We discussed this years ago. I could have cleared up the misunderstanding with a single conversation. Instead, I suggested Elena communicate her preferences directly to Marcus. He's very eager to please, I told her. I'm sure he'll adjust once he understands your working style. The second crack came when Marcus tried to generate the monthly retention report. My proprietary system, which I described as requiring exact protocols, started throwing error messages when Marcus attempted to input data using slightly different formatting than I demonstrated. Marcus spent 3 days trying to troubleshoot the system before finally calling me for help. Sarah, I'm getting these weird error codes, and the system won't generate the executive report. The board meeting is tomorrow. I walked him through the troubleshooting steps I'd documented, but I didn't mention the simple formatting issue that was causing the problems. Instead, I suggested he contact our IT department for technical support. But you designed this system, Marcus said, frustrated. Can't you just fix it? I'm not authorized to access those systems anymore, I replied truthfully. All my credentials were transferred to you. What I didn't explain was that the complex proprietary system was actually a fairly standard database with some custom reporting features. The errors Marcus was encountering were simple formatting issues that could be resolved in minutes by someone familiar with the system's quirks. The IT department, unfamiliar with the custom features I'd built, suggested rebuilding the entire database from scratch, a project that would take weeks. By the end of Marcus's second week, 3 smaller clients had requested to speak with me directly about concerns over communication breakdowns. Tom Peterson from Velocity Logistics had started copying Derek on emails about missed deadlines and unclear instructions. Elena Rodriguez's Henderson Industries launch was approaching a critical milestone, and Marcus's overcommunication had created confusion among the project stakeholders. Elena finally called Derek directly. Derek, I need to speak with Sarah Mitchell about the Henderson project. Your new account manager seems to be creating more problems than he's solving. Derek found me at my data entry desk, looking harried and defensive. Sarah, Elena Rodriguez is asking for you specifically. She says there are issues with Marcus's management of the Henderson launch. I looked up from my spreadsheet with practiced confusion. I'm not sure how I can help, Derek. Marcus has all the documentation and access he needs. Maybe this is just part of the learning curve? The learning curve? Derek's voice was rising. Elena is threatening to pull the Henderson contract. That's $2.3 million in revenue. I'm sure Marcus will figure it out, I said calmly. He has extensive experience from Henderson and Associates. What I didn't mention was that Marcus's experience at Henderson and Associates was primarily in new client acquisition, not retention management. It was Derek who had assumed Marcus's background translated to retention expertise. By the end of week 3, the situation had become critical. Marcus was working 16-hour days trying to manage client relationships that seemed to be deteriorating faster than he could repair them. The proprietary system remained non-functional, forcing him to track everything manually. Vendor relationships were strained due to miscommunications and unclear instructions. Derek called an emergency meeting with Janet Winters and the executive team. "We have a serious problem," Derek announced. "Client satisfaction scores have dropped 34% in 3 weeks. We have 2 major clients threatening to terminate contracts, and our vendor relationships are falling apart." Janet consulted her files. Marcus Taylor came with excellent recommendations. His experience at Henderson and Associates was exemplary. "Well, something isn't working," Derek said. "Maybe we need to bring in additional training resources." That's when someone suggested the obvious solution. "What about Sarah Mitchell?" asked Linda Chen, the CFO. "She built this entire system. Maybe she could provide additional guidance." Derek looked uncomfortable. "Sarah is in a different role now. We can't just pull her back whenever there's a problem." "Derek," Linda said firmly, "we're looking at potentially losing $4 million in annual revenue. Pride is a luxury we can't afford." The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Derek, swallowing what remained of his dignity, asked if I could consult on the client retention crisis. "I'm pretty busy with my data entry responsibilities," I said. "But I suppose I could make some time." "What seems to be the problem?" Derek's explanation was a masterpiece of deflection and blame shifting. The clients were being unreasonable. The vendor relationships had underlying issues. The system was more complex than anyone realized. "It sounds like Marcus might benefit from some additional mentoring," I suggested. "These client relationships take time to develop." "Sarah," Derek said, his voice strained, "Elena Rodriguez specifically asked for you to take over the Henderson Industries launch. She won't work with Marcus." "That's unfortunate," I replied. "But I'm not qualified for account management anymore, remember? My new role is data entry." The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. "What would it take," Derek finally asked, "for you to help us resolve this situation?" I'd been waiting for this question for weeks. "Well, Derek, I'd need proper authority to make decisions. I'd need access to all the systems and vendor relationships. I'd need a team I could work with effectively." Done. "And I need assurance that this isn't just a temporary fix. Client retention requires consistent leadership, not crisis management." Another pause. "What are you proposing?" "I'm proposing that you acknowledge this experiment failed. Marcus is a talented professional who might excel in business development or new client acquisition. But client retention requires specific expertise and established relationships." Derek's capitulation was swift and complete. By Monday morning, Marcus was transitioning to a business development role, with a face-saving promotion in title, and I was back in my 15th floor office with my skyline view, but this time, things were different. Elena Rodriguez didn't just welcome me back, she insisted on a meeting with Derek to discuss the communication breakdown that had nearly derailed the Henderson launch. "Derek," Elena said during our video call, "I want you to understand something. We don't just have a contract with Meridian Solutions. We have a relationship with Sarah Mitchell. If you ever try to replace her again without consulting your major clients, we'll find a firm that values continuity." Tom Peterson from Velocity Logistics was more direct. "Sarah, I'm glad you're back, but I need to know this won't happen again. We almost had to find alternative partners because Marcus couldn't maintain the workflow standards you'd established." Within 2 weeks of my return, client satisfaction scores had not only recovered but exceeded previous benchmarks. The proprietary system was functioning perfectly again. Amazing how those complex formatting requirements disappeared once someone familiar with the system was using it. Vendor relationships were restored and strengthened, but the real change was in how I approached my role. I began documenting everything differently, not to create confusion, but to ensure genuine knowledge transfer if needed. I cross-trained 2 junior associates on key client relationships, building redundancy into the system. I simplified processes where possible and created clear escalation procedures for complex situations. Most importantly, I started having frank conversations with Derek about succession planning, client relationship management, and the difference between innovative leadership and disruptive change. "Derek," I said during one of our weekly check-ins, "if you ever need to transition my responsibilities again, let's discuss it strategically. Client retention isn't just about processes and systems, it's about trust and consistency." Derek thoroughly chastened by the near disaster, nodded earnestly. Sarah, I want you to know that your position here is secure. We clearly underestimated the complexity of what you do. 6 months later, I was promoted to Director of Client Relations, with a salary increase that put me well above what Marcus would have earned. I was given authority to hire additional team members and implement new retention strategies across the company. The promotion announcement mentioned my invaluable expertise and irreplaceable client relationships. It was a public acknowledgement of what I'd always known but Derek had temporarily forgotten. Some roles can't simply be replaced by someone with better credentials or different experience. Marcus, to his credit, found his footing in business development. He was genuinely talented at building new relationships and closing deals. During one of our occasional conversations, he admitted that client retention had been far more complex than he'd anticipated. Sarah, I have to ask, he said, did you set me up to fail? I considered the question carefully. Marcus, I gave you exactly what Derek asked for, complete knowledge transfer of my processes and relationships. The question is whether Derek understood what he was asking for. It was true, in a way. I had provided comprehensive training and documentation. The fact that my compliance was malicious didn't change the technical accuracy of what I'd delivered. But you knew I'd struggle with those client relationships, Marcus pressed. I knew they were more complex than Derek realized, I admitted. Client retention isn't just about following processes, it's about understanding people, building trust, and maintaining consistency over years of interaction. Marcus nodded slowly. I wish Derek had understood that before asking me to replace you. Derek learned, I said. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the most valuable. A year later, I was featured in Industry Today magazine for building one of the most effective client retention programs in the southwestern United States. The article highlighted our 4% churn rate, the lowest in company history, and our innovative approach to client relationship management. Derek, quoted in the article, called me an irreplaceable asset and praised the company's commitment to recognizing and nurturing internal talent. I kept a copy of that article on my desk, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Sometimes the best way to prove your worth is to give people exactly what they ask for, even when you know they don't understand what they're requesting. The view from my 15th floor office remained the same, the Phoenix skyline stretching toward distant mountains. But my perspective had changed completely. I was no longer someone clinging to job security through indispensability. I was someone who had turned a professional betrayal into a masterclass in strategic thinking, and most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the most spectacular failures are the ones that happen exactly as planned. The moral of this story isn't about revenge, it's about understanding your true value and knowing how to demonstrate it when others fail to recognize it. Sometimes, giving people exactly what they ask for is the kindest way to teach them what they actually need. 3 weeks into Marcus's tenure, I received an urgent call from Rebecca Stone at Phoenix Distribution Partners, one of our critical shipping vendors. Sarah, I hate to bother you directly, but we have a situation with Marcus. He scheduled a vendor review meeting and, well, it didn't go well. During my training, I'd explained to Marcus that Rebecca preferred brief, data-driven meetings, focused on performance metrics. What I hadn't emphasized was that she absolutely despised lengthy PowerPoint presentations and corporate buzzwords. Marcus, eager to make his mark, had prepared a 40-slide presentation titled Optimizing Synergistic Partnership Dynamics and invited 6 vendor partners to a 2-hour meeting. He used the word synergy 17 times, Rebecca told me. 17 times, Sarah. And he asked us to fill out a 20-page partnership assessment form rating our collaborative optimization potential. 2 vendors left the meeting early. One actually laughed out loud when Marcus suggested implementing quarterly strategic alignment workshops. Rebecca, I said carefully, Marcus is still learning everyone's communication preferences. Maybe you could give him some direct feedback? I tried, she sighed. He told me he appreciated my traditional perspective, but that Meridian was moving toward next-generation vendor relationship management. The Henderson Industries launch dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Elena Rodriguez had specifically requested a small, intimate gathering at her favorite steakhouse, the same place where we'd celebrated every major milestone over 8 years. Marcus, following my documentation about client appreciation events, decided to upgrade the venue to a trendy fusion restaurant and invite the entire project team, including people Elena had never met. Sarah, Elena called me from the restaurant bathroom. Who are all these people? And why is Marcus giving a toast about disruptive innovation in logistics partnerships? This is supposed to be a celebration, not a corporate retreat. The evening climaxed when Marcus presented Elena with a Partnership Excellence Award, a custom trophy he'd ordered without consulting anyone. Elena, mortified by the public attention, quietly asked the waiter to wrap up her barely touched. Entrez. We're leaving, she whispered to me on her way out. This is exactly the kind of corporate theater I hired Meridian to avoid. The morning Derek found Marcus crying at his desk, I was updating spreadsheets 3 floors below. The proprietary system had finally crashed completely after Marcus tried to optimize the database structure without understanding the underlying relationships between tables. 3 weeks of client data was corrupted. Automated communications stopped sending. The monthly retention report that the board relied on was impossible to generate. Marcus had been working 18-hour days trying to rebuild everything manually, tracking client interactions on sticky notes and maintaining vendor schedules in a personal notebook. Sarah, Derek called me into his office, his face pale. I need you to look at something. Confidentially. He showed me printouts of client satisfaction surveys from the past month. The comments were devastating. Communication has become chaotic and unprofessional. Our account manager seems overwhelmed and unfamiliar with our needs. We're considering alternative providers for future projects. Derek, I said quietly, these relationships took years to build. They can be damaged much faster than they can be repaired. The final straw came during a conference call with our 3 largest clients. Marcus, attempting to demonstrate his strategic thinking, proposed consolidating all vendor relationships through a single, preferred partner, effectively eliminating the specialized providers each client had specifically requested. Absolutely not, Elena Rodriguez said firmly. Sarah spent 2 years finding vendors who understood our specific requirements. We're not changing our entire supply chain for the sake of simplification. After the call, I received individual messages from all 3 clients asking the same question: when is Sarah coming back? Marcus, realizing he was losing control of every major relationship, made a desperate decision. He scheduled individual calls with each client to clarify the communication breakdown. During these calls, he inadvertently revealed that I was still with the company but had been reassigned to a more strategic role in data analysis. Elena's response was immediate and nuclear: Derek, either Sarah Mitchell manages our account, or we terminate our contract. Those are your options. The emergency board meeting was called for Friday afternoon. I was summoned not as a consultant, but as a witness to the damage assessment. Derek had prepared a presentation attempting to explain the client retention crisis. He blamed market conditions, unreasonable client expectations, and the complex transition period. Linda Chen, the CFO, interrupted him mid-sentence. Derek, we've lost $1.2 million in confirmed revenue in 3 weeks. Elena Rodriguez has given us an ultimatum. Tom Peterson is actively recommending alternative providers to his other clients. What exactly is your plan to fix this? Derek's response was a masterpiece of corporate doublespeak about recalibrating our approach and implementing enhanced training protocols. Enough, said Robert Hayes, the CEO. Get Sarah Mitchell in here. Now. When I entered the boardroom, the atmosphere was thick with tension. 6 executives stared at me like I was either their salvation or their executioner. Sarah, Robert said directly, we need to understand what happened. Derek says the transition was properly managed, but we're seeing unprecedented client defection. I chose my words carefully. The transition was managed exactly as Derek requested. Complete knowledge transfer, comprehensive documentation, full client introductions. Marcus received everything I could provide. Then why is it failing? Linda asked. Because, I said quietly, Derek assumed that client retention was about processes and systems. But clients don't have relationships with processes. They have relationships with people. Marcus's last day was handled with surprising grace. Rather than a humiliating termination, Derek positioned it as a strategic reassignment to business development, where Marcus's innovative thinking could drive new growth opportunities. Marcus actually thanked me during his farewell lunch. You tried to warn me, he said. When you showed me all those client preferences and vendor relationships, you were telling me how complex this really was. I just thought I could streamline everything. Derek thought the same thing, I replied. Sometimes the most complex-looking systems are actually the most efficient. 6 months later, Marcus had generated $800,000 in new client revenue through his business development work. He'd found his actual strength, and the company benefited from placing him in the right role. Elena Rodriguez not only renewed her contract, but expanded it by 40%. During the signing meeting, she looked directly at Derek and said, "This is what happens when you value expertise over ego." The vendor relationships weren't just restored, they were strengthened. Tom Peterson actually referred 2 new clients to us, specifically citing our reliable and professional account management. 2 years later, I was invited to speak at the National Client Retention Conference. My presentation was titled The Hidden Complexity of Simple Systems: Why Relationships Can't Be Replaced. In the audience sat Derek, who had since been promoted to VP of Operations. During the Q&A, someone asked about succession planning in client-facing roles. The biggest mistake organizations make, I said, looking directly at Derek, is assuming that good management means making everything replaceable. Some roles aren't about following procedures, they're about building trust. And trust can't be transferred in a training manual. After my presentation, Derek approached me. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. And I owe you credit for teaching me the most important lesson of my career. Which is that sometimes the best way to show someone their value is to let them prove it on their own terms." I smiled. Sometimes, Derek, the most expensive education is also the most valuable. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.